I used to think silence was healing, that if I could just get far enough away from everything, the noise, the students, the deadlines, the constant flicker of screens, I'd finally find peace. That was before the cabin, before Stillwater Creek. I'd been teaching at St. Helens High for 5 years, long enough to feel the slow corrosion of burnout. I wasn't sleeping. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. with my heart pounding, my mind reciting tomorrow's lesson plans. When my doctor suggested time off, I said I'd think about it. When my principal offered to arrange it, I said yes, before she finished the sentence. A week later, I found a listing online. Secluded cabin for rent, perfect for writers, artists, or anyone needing peace. The photo showed a small 2-story lodge wrapped in pines, near a lake so still it looked painted. It was exactly what I needed, or what I thought I needed. The drive took 4 hours from Portland. Asphalt turned to gravel, then to dirt. The trees grew thicker, their trunks twisting like muscle. By the time I reached Stillwater Creek Road, my cell signal was gone. When I pulled up, the cabin was smaller than I'd imagined. Rough cedar walls, a tin roof, a single porch light glowing faintly, even in daylight. There was a note pinned to the door, written in neat handwriting. "Welcome, Miss Carter. Keys under the mat. Generators out back. Enjoy your stay. No name, no contact number, just that." Inside, the cabin smelled faintly of pine and old smoke. There was a fireplace stacked with wood, a kitchenette, and one bedroom upstairs with a narrow window overlooking the forest. Everything was tidy, too tidy, like no one had lived here in a long time, but someone wanted it to look occupied. I spent the first evening unpacking, making tea and listening to the wind scrape the roof. It was peaceful in a hollow sort of way. By nightfall, the quiet started pressing in. I'd forgotten how absolute silence could feel, like the world was holding its breath. I kept expecting to hear something, a car, a plane, even a distant dog, but there was nothing, just the occasional creak of wood expanding in the cold. Around midnight, I heard it, a faint tapping from outside, not steady, random. At first, I thought it was branches. Then I remembered. The trees didn't touch the cabin. I got up, peered through the window, and saw only darkness, deep, ink-black forest. No moonlight, no movement. The tapping stopped. I told myself it was an animal. Probably was. Still, I locked the door. The next morning, I found something strange. On the porch railing, right near the steps, someone or something had left a small pile of stones. Perfectly stacked. 6 of them, smallest on top. I stared at it for a long time. I hadn't seen anyone on the way in. The nearest town was 20 miles back. Maybe hikers, maybe kids, but the way they were arranged, balanced just so, felt deliberate. I swept them off and went about my day. I spent the morning reading and walking near the creek. The water was clear but slow, moving like syrup. I followed it downstream until it disappeared into fog. At some point, I realized I couldn't hear the usual forest sounds. No birds, no insects, just the dull murmur of my own footsteps. That night, I dreamt of water running beneath floorboards. I woke up to the same tapping sound, faster now, like fingers against glass. When I turned on the lamp, the sound stopped. I didn't sleep again. By the 3rd day, the air in the cabin felt heavy, like someone else had been breathing in it. I started leaving the windows open during the day, even though it was cold. Around dusk, I found another pile of stones, this time on the windowsill. 5 of them. That was when I started keeping a journal. Not for therapy, not even for sense-making, just proof, a record. Because I was beginning to question whether the isolation was doing something to me. In my first entry, I wrote, "If I start forgetting things or seeing things, this will remind me what's real." That night, as I was writing, I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow, deliberate, crunching in the gravel. I froze. The steps stopped right outside the door. Then silence. When I finally found the courage to peek through the curtain, there was no one there. But the stones were back. 7 this time, perfectly balanced. And in the middle of the top one, carved faintly, like with a nail, was a single word: stay. I told myself it was a prank, that maybe the owner or some local kids were messing around. That's what I kept repeating the next morning, even as I swept the stones off the porch again and buried them near the tree line. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. That night, I moved a chair in front of the door. I laughed at myself while doing it, the nervous kind of laugh that feels like it's echoing inside an empty room. There's no Wi-Fi here, no cell signal. If I wanted to call for help, I'd have to drive 10 miles back down the dirt road to reach service. But I didn't want to leave, not yet. I needed this break. I deserved it. Still, I found myself double-checking every window latch before bed. The stillness outside wasn't comforting anymore. It was oppressive. The tapping came back the next night, but this time it wasn't at the window. It came from under the floor. A slow, dragging scrape, like someone crawling, their nails dragging across the wooden planks. I froze. My breath fogged the air. The sound moved toward the kitchen, then stopped. I waited, muscles locked, until I couldn't hear anything but the thud of my pulse. When morning came, I checked under the house. Just dirt, roots, and old pipes. No footprints, no animals. But by the porch steps, the stones were back again. Only 4 this time, each one carved with a letter. S-T-A-Y. I stopped journaling after that. It didn't feel like documenting anymore. It felt like confessing to something I didn't understand. The next few days blurred together. I barely ate. I barely slept. The forest seemed to close in tighter every day, the trees leaning closer, like they were listening. I tried to distract myself, cleaning, reading, hiking, but it was useless. Everywhere I went, I felt watched. It wasn't just paranoia, it was presence. Sometimes I'd catch the faint smell of wood smoke from nowhere. Other times I'd wake up to find the front door slightly open, even though I'd locked it the night before. Once, I found a muddy handprint on the inside of the window. Small, child-sized. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at that handprint, and thinking, how much sleep deprivation does it take to start hallucinating like this? Because if I didn't believe that, the only other explanation was much worse. On the 5th day, I hiked towards Stillwater Creek again. The water was lower now, barely moving, like something upstream had blocked it. And on the opposite bank, I saw footprints, small, bare, leading into the trees. I followed them. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity, maybe defiance. They led to a clearing I hadn't seen before, a shallow depression surrounded by stones. Inside it, half buried in moss, was what looked like an old well or cistern. The bricks were crumbling, the wood cover rotted through. The air smelled of iron and wet earth. When I leaned over the edge, I saw nothing but black water, smooth as glass. But when I dropped a pebble, the sound that came back wasn't a splash. It was knocking, soft, rhythmic, from somewhere deep below. That was the first time I ran. That night, I dreamt of children standing around the cabin, whispering my name. When I woke up, I could still hear the whispers, faint just outside the window. My first instinct was to pack and leave. I grabbed my bag, my keys, everything. But when I stepped outside, the car was gone. I stood there, staring at the empty patch of gravel where it had been parked. No tire marks, no sound, just gone. The panic came slow. First disbelief, then dread that settled like ice in my gut. I was trapped. I screamed into the forest, voice cracking, but nothing answered, not even an echo. I don't remember going back inside, but somehow I did. I locked the door, dragged the dresser in front of it, and sat on the floor until my legs went numb. That's when I saw the journal again, sitting on the table, open to a blank page. Except it wasn't blank anymore. In shaky handwriting, not mine, someone had written, "You said you'd stay."
I tore out the page and burned it in the fireplace. The flames hissed like wet wood, and for a moment, I thought I heard a voice whisper through the smoke. Not words, just the shape of them. The next morning, I found footprints circling the cabin. Small ones again. Bare. There were no stones this time. Just a single wooden toy horse left on the porch. Old, hand-carved, painted blue, one eye missing. I threw it into the fire. It cracked loudly, like a bone snapping, and the smoke filled the room with that same metallic iron scent from the well. That was when I finally decided to leave. No car, no phone, no map, just the dirt road and my own shaking hands. I started walking. The forest was different in daylight. Too quiet, like everything was holding itself still. I walked for hours, but the road didn't look familiar anymore. Every turn looked the same trees, the same bends, the same moss-covered rocks. At one point, I saw something hanging from a branch ahead. A piece of cloth, maybe. When I got closer, I realized it was my own scarf, the one I'd left on the coat hook inside the cabin. I dropped it and ran. I didn't stop until the sun was setting. And when I finally looked up, I was back where I started. The cabin. Waiting. Smoke rising from the chimney. But I hadn't lit the fire. I don't remember unlocking the door. Inside, everything looked the same, except for one thing. On the table, where my journal had been, there was a new stack of stones. 4 of them, and beside them, a note written in that same neat handwriting as before. "Welcome back, Miss Carter. You're safe now." The ink was fresh. I don't know how long I sat there. The light outside faded to black. The fire burned itself low, and I could hear water again, faint, trickling beneath the floorboards. That's when I realized the sound wasn't coming from below. It was coming through the walls. Like the whole cabin was breathing. The walls groaned, the floor shifted, and I heard that same slow knocking. From behind the fireplace this time, muffled and insistent. Something was inside the walls. And then, beneath the knocking, a voice, a child's whisper, right next to my ear. "We told you to stay." When the whisper stopped, the silence was worse. I sat there frozen, listening to the creaks and breathing of the cabin, trying to decide if I'd finally lost it. My heartbeat was so loud it felt like it was shaking the air. I didn't want to believe what I'd heard. The human mind can make ghosts out of nothing. I know that. I've lectured my students on perception, how isolation bends it until it breaks. But what I felt in that moment wasn't imagination. It was presence, something aware. I grabbed the flashlight and stumbled toward the wall behind the fireplace. The knocking had stopped, but the air was warmer there, almost humid, like a closed attic after summer heat. The wallpaper was peeling. I tore a piece off and saw a faint outline of something burned into the wood beneath. A name, barely legible. Ava, a child's name. The boards felt soft there. I pressed my palm against one, and it gave slightly under the weight. That was when I noticed it. The smell, wet, metallic, old.
I don't remember deciding to move the woodpile, but soon I had the fireplace half empty, my hands black with soot. Behind it, half hidden by a false panel, was a small wooden door, no bigger than a crawlspace hatch. A cold draft leaked from the cracks around it. When I pulled it open, my flashlight flickered. The space behind was narrow and deep, a crawl tunnel leading straight into darkness. I could see where the soil had been disturbed, the edges pressed by small hands, and along the tunnel walls, faint chalk drawings, stick figures, trees, something that might have been the cabin itself, and words. Stay, don't go. We're still here. I nearly screamed when something touched my arm. It was just the wind, but for a second, I could have sworn I felt fingers. I slammed the hatch shut and backed away. That was when I heard footsteps overhead, soft, careful, like someone trying not to wake me. But there was no one upstairs. At least, there wasn't supposed to be. I crept up the staircase, the flashlight shaking in my grip. Each step groaned like it might give out beneath me. The bedroom door was half open. The air inside was cold, though the fire below was still burning. On the bed, someone had laid out my clothes, neatly folded like for the next morning. My journal sat beside them, closed this time. When I opened it, the handwriting wasn't mine. Ava is lonely. Ava wants you to stay. That was enough. I packed what I could, ran outside, and didn't look back. But the forest didn't look like the forest anymore. The trees were too close, the path gone. Every direction looked the same. Dark trunks, pale fog, the faint sound of running water that seemed to circle me no matter which way I turned. At one point, I thought I saw the road through the trees. I ran toward it and found myself standing in front of the cabin again.
No smoke this time. No light. The door was open. I don't know why I went back inside. Maybe part of me thought I could reason with whatever was there. Maybe I just didn't want to die lost in the woods. Inside, everything looked different. The furniture was gone. The walls were darker. The air was heavy with mold and rot, like decades had passed while I was outside. The floorboards near the fireplace were wet, and when I looked down, I saw muddy handprints leading from the crawlspace door, across the floor, up the stairs, and toward the window. Small hands, children's. Then a sound. Soft, rhythmic, knocking, coming from beneath again. I don't know where I found the courage, but I went to the hatch and opened it. The smell hit me first. Cold mud, rust, something foul beneath it. Then I saw them. Not ghosts. Not quite. The tunnel opened into a small underground chamber, walls lined with old bricks, half collapsed. And there, sitting in the mud, were three small shapes. Human-shaped, but wrong. Their skin gray with rot, their faces slack, their hair clumped with dirt. Children, or what was left of them. One of them still clutched something in its hand, a blue wooden horse, the same one I'd burned. And in the flicker of my dying flashlight, one of them moved, its head turned toward me, the mouth twitching like it wanted to speak. And in that thin, rasping voice, it whispered, "You came back." I don't remember running. I remember branches tearing my arms, my feet hitting the ground so hard I thought I'd break bones. The air was full of that whisper, echoing between the trees, overlapping, until it became a single pleading sound. Stay, stay, stay. Then, a flash of light, headlights, a car. I stumbled into the road and waved until the driver stopped. An old man climbed out, shotgun in hand, shouting something I couldn't hear. I must have looked like a ghost myself. Barefoot, covered in mud and blood. When he saw my face, his expression changed. He asked where I'd come from. I told him,
The cabin by Stillwater Creek. His face went white.
There hasn't been a cabin there in years, he said. Burned down back in the 90s. Some teacher rented it. Never made it out. I woke up in a hospital 2 days later. Exposure, dehydration, shock. That's what they said. The police found my car in a ditch, half buried in snow, less than a mile from town. They said there was no cabin, no footprints, no crawl space. But sometimes, when I'm alone, I still smell pine smoke. And once, a few months later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a small blue wooden horse. The same one. The same missing eye. And beneath it, a note written in a child's shaky handwriting. Thank you for staying. It's been 3 years since Stillwater Creek. I left teaching, moved to the city, tried to rebuild. But every so often, when the city sleeps and the world goes quiet, I still hear it. The soft, patient tapping on my window. And I know, whatever I left behind in those woods, it didn't stay there.